Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. If you've been following along on our Mastering Autodesk Vault Setup and Optimization series, then you'll know we've been focusing on some back-end architecture and workflow-focused settings. Today, we're going to look at folder structures within Vault and then setting up Inventor to work with it. As always, like, follow, and subscribe to get notified as we dive deeper into Mastering Vault. If you've been following along and you have a Vault set up now, you'll notice that when you log into it for the first time, it's pretty much empty. The only thing you'll see in there is pretty much a Project Explorer, which is the area where your folder structure and your files will live. It's up to us as admins and users to set up this environment to match the structure that A, we need, and B, we use. When setting up this folder structure, there's two types of folders that you can use. The first one is a standard new folder, which is where your engineering data is going to live. Your day-to-day work and designs are going to be stored. The second type of folder here is a library folder. Typically, we look at this for files that are standard, or a good example of files that you would contain in here are content center files, which aren't really designed by the users, but they're used day to day, not only in one design, but probably multiple. Setting them up in different kinds of folders gives Vault and Inventor the ability to tell the difference between the types of files that are being worked on. I mentioned earlier, setting this up is the responsibility of the admin and the users, which gives you a very good point in time to start deciding whether or not the folder structure that you currently use is the one that you want to be using or need to be using. A lot of the times when we go on implementations and start setting up this environment, we talk about, what is your current folder structure for your files? Are you sorting them by projects? Are you sorting them by design type? Are you sorting them by machine type? And is that the way that is most efficient for your business or your design process? Right now, as a roundtable, whether it be with your colleagues or your engineering team, you can go ahead and decide whether this is a good time to pivot and start storing your files that the way that you want to. Now, when working with Inventor and Vault, if you're familiar with Inventor, you'll know you need a workspace, a folder that Inventor uses to know what files are part of the project and it is allowed to modify and see. Vault helps us enable this by generating a top-level folder where our designs will live. Very typically, that top-level folder is called Designs, just to keep things consistent across the workspace, or you can call it Engineering, you can call it your company name, anything that you're accustomed to or need it to be. For our example, we're going to go with Designs. So we're going to go ahead and create a folder, name it Designs, and give it the category of folder. That just means it's going to be a standard folder with no external permissions on it. It just exists within the Vault environment. So now we have a Designs folder, but let's go back to the libraries that we were talking about. Let's go ahead and create that structure as well. One of the things we can do, and again, one of the examples I used is content center files. Those content center files exist as databases for Inventor, whether you have them locally or attached to the Vault server. But within those databases, you have hundreds of thousands of combinations of a bolt, a screw, pretty much any type of hardware you may use or standard library, right? Well, we have to go ahead and give it a landing place for when we generate an actual model of it. All of it is just a table and numbers while it's in the database, but once we need it and once we use it, there's a model that we need to associate. So let's give Content Center a place to land. And in this case, instead of a new standard folder, we're going to go ahead and generate a new library folder. We're going to give it a name that makes it pretty easy to recognize. So Content Center Files. The name that you use exactly can pretty much be left up to you, whatever makes it more recognizable within your environment. In this case, we're using content center files, and the name that you use will be referenced later on when we take a look at the Inventor project file and we tell it, hey, this is where you want to go ahead and look and put any of the files that we generate. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And you'll notice that right off the bat, with the two different types of folders that we generate, we have content center files that shows up as a library icon, while we have designs, which shows up as a standard folder here. Now, something to keep in mind again, if you're new to Vault or you're kind of just getting into the workflow, there are two portions of Vault. One is the server side, which again, if you've been following along, you are familiar with, and you know that there's folders and files on the back end, but there's also the local portion of it. So, you don't want to store all of your files on your local machine, because then you run out of space and, it kind of defeats the purpose of Vault. So in Vault Client, we have to tell it where that local folder is. The way that we do that is we go to Tools, Administration, and Vault Settings. And then under the Files tab, there is the ability to go into the working folder and define it. So that's what that's called. The local folder that you download all of your files to and work off of in Inventor is called your working folder. What it should do is actually mirror the structure that you see within Vault. So what we're expecting here is we have a top level folder called Designs. We should have a top level folder called Designs in our local drive. You'll see here that there are two options. One is to allow your users to define their own working folders and dictate what the folder names are. There's nothing wrong with that. It just makes it a little harder to keep track of where everyone has their files. The other option we have is enforcing consistent working folders. This is an admin privilege and permission, which means that us as administrators get to set that folder, and everyone else that logs into the Vault will get a notification the first time that they log in, letting them know that the folder they're set to use is blank, right? So in our case, it'll say our working folder is C drive _ marketing Vault. So when you set that, you can click that button with the three little dots, and it actually opens up your local folders. So in my case, what I did is I went to the C drive, I created the marketing Vault folder, and I added a little underscore at the front. The reason we do this is it helps keep that Vault folder at the very top of our list of folders, right? So you don't have to go down your list of folders that exist on your C drive and look for the Vault working folder. You'll know that it's at the top, or at least near the top, when you use an underscore to keep everything there. So once you have that folder created, you can select it, hit select folder, and it'll set that as the new working folder. We can go ahead and hit OK from here and close out. Again, if you want to make sure that this folder has been applied, one of the quick tests you can do is log out. And then when you go ahead and log in for the first time after the working folder has been changed, you will get a notification that your system administrator has set your working folder to the dedicated one. In this case, again, the marketing Vault folder. If I hit OK, that means that now that the setting has taken place, if I right-click on any of my folders and say, go to working folder, it'll take me to the local folder on my machine that corresponds to this folder inside of Vault. So just as an example, again, we set our working folder to marketing Vault, and then the folder we wanted to go to was Designs, and that mirrors Project Explorer at marketing Vault and Designs at Designs, kind of one-to-one mirroring, which is what we want. What we also want to do is get a local copy of our library folders. In our local drive, they won't look any different, but we know that in Vault, they are a library folder. So again, you can either do a get, which I don't recommend for standard libraries, just because you don't use them all the time. Similar to your engineering and design folders, go ahead and grab them as you need them. If you're making edits, check them out, check them back in, make sure that everything is being captured within Vault. Again, you don't want to use up all of your local space and hold information that is readily available within the Vault environment. So what we do instead is go to working folder. And what that does, again, is it takes us to the location that it expects it, which is Marketing Vault, Content Center files. Now that we have a copy of both folders within our Vault, within our local Vault environment, we can go into Inventor and create a project file that works with our Vault, right? You want to make sure that the workflow that you're setting up within Inventor is consistent and able to work for everyone in your company. To do that, we're going to go ahead and open up Inventor. You're going to click on the projects. There's a drop-down menu, but there's also 3 little dots here that you can click. And you're going to go into settings. You'll see here I already have a Marketing Vault project file created. The way that we went through that is we click new. Now when you're creating this project, you want to make sure that you're using a new Vault project. New single user project isn't meant to work with Vault. If you create a new single user project and try to use it with your Vault in Inventor, you'll notice pretty quickly that it's not the right type. And what I mean by that is when you go to log in, it'll let you log into Vault from Inventor, but opening up files or checking out files, checking in files, none of those functions will work. So that's a pretty quick way of knowing whether you created the right type of project. Instead, again, we want to use a new Vault project, and that will enable all of those functions that you're expecting. You can go ahead and hit next here. You're going to go ahead and name the project something that makes sense to you and your users, right? So in my case, Marketing Vault will let me know I created this project file specifically for our marketing team to see. So go ahead and name it, which in our case, again, we're going to go with Marketing Vault 2 just to keep it separate. And then the thing I like to change here is the workspace or the folder that we're going to point it to. So when you click those 3 dots there, again, it opens up your local environment. We're going to go ahead and point to our working folder, and we're going to hit OK. So the working folder you see here should be the same working folder that you set inside of your Vault client. If you have libraries that you maintain in Inventor as well, you can go ahead and associate them to your Vault project at this time. If you don't have those, then you can go ahead and skip this step and just hit finish. That will go ahead and create the project file for you. Now, once you have the project file created, you're not necessarily done. There's still a couple steps that you have to go through. One is mapping the actual workspace that you're going to use. So in this case, we're going to tell it, hey, all of the files that Inventor is going to use exist under designs, right? So we're going to go ahead and select our Marketing Vault. Let's go ahead and set this to default here and delete the one we just created and work only with the one that we need to, right? So Marketing Vault, select it. And what you want to do is go to Workspace, right click on the Workspace folder, hit edit. You'll see here that it says Marketing Vault. And we're going to tell it that when you're working with this project file, all of the files should be under designs. And that's okay. So we select that, click on the white space, and you'll see here that the value changed to designs. We're going to go ahead and hit save. and apply it, which means the project is now active. Now that we have the project file workspace set up, we have to tell it where in Vault everything should point. Now we're going to go ahead and log in. We're going to, once it pops up here, make sure that we're logging into the right vault, which is again the marketing vault. And we're going to hit OK here. Again, once you log in, one of the first things you should notice is this open button shouldn't gray out. If you're using the wrong type of project file, this open button will gray out, and the only option you'll have is to log out, which, you know, doesn't really give you much of a choice in working with Vault. But once you're logged in and you know you're on the right project, you're going to go ahead and hit the drop-down menu under Access, and you're going to click on Map Folders. So we told the Inventor project where locally all of your files are, but we didn't tell the Inventor project where in Vault it's supposed to resolve to, right? So that's what we're doing here. Project root is exactly what it sounds like. If we look at our Vault client, at the very top, Project Explorer is that $. That's what it's looking for. So what we do is we select project root, edit, and we select the $. We hit OK, and lets us map it. The other thing that exists here is Content Center files. So if we hit edit and select our Content Center files and hit OK, that will work as well. You'll see there's a couple of other options here that we can use. One is templates and design data. If all your users across your environment are sharing templates, which in a lot of cases they are, you can go ahead and store them inside of Vault. Make sure that everyone's getting the latest and greatest versions of all of them. Same thing with the design data. If you're using certain styles, if you're using certain title blocks, any of that information that Inventor likes to use, you can store it within Vault. And what's really nice about the more recent versions of Inventor is that when it opens up, it actually goes to the Vault and fetches the latest version of it, right? So if that's something that interests you or would benefit your workflow, I highly recommend doing that as well. In our case, what we're only using for now is the project's root, which is the files that we're going to design, and then the Content Center files themselves. So once we generate them, that's where it'll place them. What we can do now is hit OK. And then the last thing we want to do is check it into Vault. One of the ways that we can do this is actually just by creating a part. I'm going to go ahead and create a standard part. And this would be a pretty good test as well, right? What we're expecting when we create one of these parts is to be able to save it in the correct folder and then upload it into Vault and see it in the very exact same folder structure. So again, this is my infamous training part. We're just going to go ahead and create a pin and then extrude it and then save it. Now when we save it, we talked about this earlier, the folder structure should mirror whatever is in the Vault. What's nice about Vault is if that folder doesn't exist yet, you can create it locally and it'll mirror it and create it inside of your Vault environment. So let's go ahead and do that as well. We're going to go ahead and create a new folder here under our designs folder, which is a good start. That's where we told Inventor our files will live. And then we will create a marketing folder. Now within that marketing folder, we can go ahead and create our pin, save it as an IPT. And now when we go to check it in, what we should see is where inside of Vault it wants to put our new file. So designs marketing, which is what we're expecting, and it'll put our pin there. But you should also see that it's trying to upload the project file for Inventor that we created, which is also good. That's exactly what we wanted. Go ahead and place a comment in here, which usually on creation, I like to put initial load. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. We'll see it go up into the vault, 2 files, the project file and the IPT that we have. And then once we have it in there, our check is going to be to go into our vault, do a refresh here, and there we see our project file. This little I button here, this little warning sign, usually happens on initial load. There's an easy way to get rid of that, which is you go ahead and right click, do a get, and when you do a get, it'll download locally to your it'll download locally to your environment. In my case, it running us a little bit issue here with the Inventor, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of there. But by downloading it, your icon will disappear and it'll know the status of it. This icon here just tells you the local status, which just means compared to the files that are in Vault, how old or how new are the files in your local folder. The secondary test that we want is to make sure that our file went into the correct folder. And again, marketing didn't exist previously, we just had designs, and now we have a new marketing folder as well as our pin that we created. You'll see here that the little circle just tells us, the icon tells us that we have a local copy of this file, and we're kind of in a good spot here. The last thing you want to do is make sure that all the users that are working in this Vault environment are using the correct project file. And for that, we go back to our administration and Vault settings window and actually right back into that define working folder options section. In here, not only can you set the working folder, but you can enforce the project file that users have to work with. Once we have the project file inside of Vault, that's when we can assign this. So we have to go through those initial steps first. We're going to click those 3 buttons. It should open a separate window here in a bit. And we're going to tell it to use Marketing Vault, project file, hit OK, and this will enforce it across all your users. Once that's enforced, they'll be able to download and use the project file to go into their day-to-day designing activities. But that's pretty much it. You have a working environment. Again, one of the important things here is making sure that you're setting it up right the first time, whether that is how you're currently working and have your folder set up, or if it's a pivot point where you start working in a different format. It's definitely worth taking the time and figuring that out before importing or setting up files and folders within your Vault. If you missed any of our previous sessions in this Mastering Autodesk Vault Setup and Optimization series, you can find them in the links below. And if you want to learn more, then like, follow, and subscribe to get notified of our newest videos.